Hey everybody, now look who's in the intro video this time. It's Patrick. So Patrick and I are here. We are going to see Furiosa. Patrick, do you have initial thoughts?
I'm just hoping for a good popcorn movie, honestly. I wasn't sure if I was going to see this, and then you wanted to see it. I was like, well, fuck, I'll go with you to see it then. But, you know, I mean, it's with the a first one that's not focusing on
on Mad Max. Yeah, it's
so,
in the world.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that doesn't mean that you can't be good. So it's a little different. So we'll see what happens. And I mean, the character that they're doing the prequel for is interesting. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's not Charlize Theron, but you know, she's a little bit older. But it's Anna Taylor-Joy, who I really enjoy. She's a good actress. I think that it's going to be a spectacle. If anything, if it's like Fury Road in any way, it'll be enjoyable because, like, I felt that movie was light on story, but the action in that movie was so intense and it looked pretty. And that's what I'm kind of expecting from this. I'm not expecting any type of, like, you know, any like messages or anything like that. Like, I just want to have a good time. Yeah. And that's what I expect this movie to be. I expect it to be. I already saw my Message movie, which was the last movie. Yeah, I just really want to enjoy this, and I've been looking forward to it. It's been something that I thought would be fun to see. Those Memorial Day weekend, we are here booty ass early to see it, so it's cheap.
Yep.
And yeah, instead of The Strangers, which his wife wanted to see instead.
The thing with me with that, and I know this is not The Strangers.
Oh, I know it's not. That'll be later.
It's just like. I thought it was supposed to be a prequel. It's supposed to be a reboot, and at that point, the Strangers aren't that old. They're already rebooting this thing. I'd rather just go watch the original Strangers. I really don't have too much want to go see this other one. And
that's why, like, I was more excited to see Fury Road or Furiosa, instead of seeing the Strangers. Like, I could see the Strangers later. I don't have to, like, I could even wait for that for VOD.
I agree.
But we'll probably end up seeing that as well sometime soon. But
maybe.
Yeah, we'll be back after the break.
Welcome to Thunderdome, bitch.
Okay, we're back from seeing Furiosa.
Popcorn.
Well, he's got popcorn that he's bringing home to Crystal for some reason, even though she didn't come, she didn't want to come, but he's a nice husband and decides to bring her popcorn.
Yep.
And first I want to get this out of the way. I know he probably does too. Parents, watch your fucking kids.
Yeah. I was so tempted to kick that kid down the stairs, but it's not his fault that his parents aren't fucking parents. You got this kid running up and down the fucking aisles.
The entire fucking movie.
I went and got someone. They I guess because they weren't there for 2 seconds, didn't see him running. Of course, go figure. But when I bring someone in there, they're not fucking, you know, they actually have the kid sitting down for a second.
And then they took him out at one point and that was like nice for a little bit. And then immediately after they come back, 2 minutes later, he's running up and fucking down the aisles. It's annoying. It's really fucking annoying.
See, here's the problem, that all these theaters want you to come and have the theater experience and come to the theater, but then no one wants to monitor what these fucking idiots are doing in the movie.
Right.
And that's where the problem is. That's why I've said it once, I say it again, people laugh, but if I had the money, I'd have my own theater. You sign a waiver, you talk, you act up, you get fucking shocked in your seat. I don't give a fuck.
Or you'd make it adults only, no kids for specific movies. Doesn't matter if it's PG-13, okay, you can't have anybody. We're actually going to enforce the rules on these ratings.
I'd rather do capital punishment. Rated
R movie, no kids. Yeah, how old's that kid? That kid ain't fucking 17, so you better get the hell out. Because it's just, and it's only certain areas, because there's another theater that's just a little ways down, and I don't think we've ever had this type of problem before.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, good old Hayward. But not here necessarily to talk about that. We're going to keep this relative. This is all spoiler free, by the way.
And it's hot in here.
And it's hot in the car because it's been hot outside. So spoiler free Furiosa, and then we'll all go into spoilers later on. But Patrick, what are your thoughts?
It's a good origin story in a sense. I think a little too long at the beginning before they really got into what was going on. And I felt like some things not explained, even though I walked out for a few minutes. But basically she went from going to be a certain thing in the movie. I don't want to give anything away.
Yep.
She escapes from that and does something else, basically she starts getting the skills to be who Furiosa is in the last Mad Max movie. But it's like all of a sudden it's just like, oh, okay, everything's cool now. Like they thought she was a boy because she shaved her head, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh, everything's cool.
Yeah,
that was a little weird.
Yeah, there's, and I'll go into that a little bit. Like there's beats in the story that are just odd. Like, again, I'm not really coming to this for the story necessarily. I'm coming for the action.
Well, I agree.
But it's still, some things need to make sense, and I agree with that. And that's where I'm saying that I have issues directly, with the story for the thing. In terms of acting, I think that I think Chris Hemsworth is fucking great in this movie. And if that's his natural accent, it throws me the fuck off.
I thought he's
fucking
really
great.
He's really good.
I think all the action and stuff in it, the spectacle is really good.
Yeah.
I think that,
At one point, with this doesn't give anything away, at one point he's like, I don't have any weapons. I was at one point just waiting for him to put his hand out like this. And like, Melmir is just going to show up. But no, he was really good in this.
I didn't really recognize him in the beginning either. And I'm like, I know Chris Hemsworth's in this. Isn't he the bad guy? And like, that kind of looks like him, but it doesn't quite look like him,
Yeah.
But, and I'm used to him, he has a specific sounding voice that he does in like every movie. And this doesn't sound like that.
I can hear it
at
a
all.
little bit.
Every once in a while it would. But for the most part, I was just, I think that it was really good. I think Anna Taylor-Joy was fine, but honestly, she's more Mad Max than she is Furiosa.
I can see, yeah.
Just because, if you saw Fury Road, Mad Max barely talks.
Yeah.
At all. And that's kind of the way Furiosa is. But Furiosa was really the one leading the story in Fury Road.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's weird to have that flip. But yeah, I definitely think that it's worth a watch. I think if you really love Fury Road, I think that you'd really love Furiosa. Again, there's no specific message. It's a revenge story.
Yeah.
It's basically what it is.
An origin story to which this movie leads right into.
It leads right into Fury Road.
Like Fury Road was.
This is not a spoiler. That the end credits, it's all basically clips from Fury Road, just to show you what she goes on to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like it almost happens like it's happening directly after Furiosa ends.
Yeah.
You're getting into Fury Road.
But you just get like I said, the origins of how she learned to do what she does and everything else. And it's, like I said, I just feel like parts of the beginning could have been cut way down.
I agree.
I get what they were trying. I get what they were trying to do, but they just drawed it out way too long. I think the beginning part.
Yeah, it's split up into 5 chapters, and the 5th chapter is the shortest. The first and the second ones are long. I mean, it makes up the whole first act, but it is too long.
Did they do that in Fury Road?
They did something similar. He did something similar. It's been a while since I've seen Fury Road too. But in general, it just was that, like, literally could have just cut that down by like 15, 20 minutes, and I think it would have been like, it was a little bit of a slog to get through. But once it picked up and the action kicked in, and then the rest of the story kicked in, I was fully entertained the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So, what's your final rating?
I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Wait, let's see, 3.5 arms go missing out of 5.
I'm at a solid 4 out of 5 mother's milk. I think that's just fun, even though it has that slow beginning. I think that George Miller just does such a phenomenal job, especially with the action. Like, there were so many times where I was just getting giddy, just like I was during Mad Max Fury Road, with people flying into places or landing on things or being thrown. There isn't necessarily the innovation of some of the vehicle types, or the weird things that you see, but overall, still pretty good. The one thing I do wish, and I know they had to get to it because it deals with Furiosa, but Imogen Joe, I kind of wish really wasn't. He's not in a whole lot, but I kind of wish that he wasn't. Yeah.
I was waiting for him to say, mediocre.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we'll plug all this stuff. I'll plug it again at the end, but he can plug real fast at this point because he probably won't be here for the spoiler section.
Yeah, so Solus_64 on TikTok and Twitch, and Solus64 on YouTube.
Yeah, and again, you guys, thank you very much for watching this part of the video. If you don't want to be spoiled, then just skip the end, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys. Hey everybody, and welcome to the spoiler section. As you see, Luna's here with me. I'm gonna flip her around for a sec so everybody can see. She's hanging out because I was at the movies, though she always has resting bitch face. I just like to let you know this. This is always her face. And now she's gonna run over there because she's hearing birds out the window, and she's probably gonna mess with shit while I'm over there. But yeah, so back from seeing Furiosa. And we're now, we're doing spoilers for this section. So Luna's involved in spoilers, hanging out there in the window. But so there's a lot of things that I want to talk about, and a lot of it comes down to story stuff in the movie, right? Of course, we're going to go through the whole thing. Like I said, it's split up into 5 different segments, right? So basically, you're having her, as a kid, in 2 of the segments, 3 of the segments, and then 2 of the segments when she's an adult, right? After everything's kind of like settling in. And as Patrick was kind of alluding to, there's a couple of things that are a little bit off in terms of the way they do it in the movie, and some of the stuff doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And but again, I'm not entirely here for it making a lot of sense, like in terms of the way it is. Like some of the stuff, it is a little ridiculous in the way that they do it, but overall, I'll say it again, I still think that everything is fine in this movie, in the way that it moves, in the way that it goes. It's just the pacing could be just a little bit better. So we open the film with Furiosa and a little Valkyrie that's there, and of course Luna wants to meow at the same time. But they're basically picking fruit, right? And the one thing that is going to be consistent is going to be the seed that comes from the fruit eventually. And, she notices that there are some wastelanders, and they're in a beautiful area, right? Where it's lush and green, and there's water, and there's all these people there. And I have to think to myself, because they show a quick shot of the town, and the town, or village, or whatever you want to call it, the living place that they're at, and there's a couple of fat people, and I'm like, how did they get so fat? And they have to realize, oh, it's because it's like a natural environment, I guess. But I guess, as the rest of the wasteland, the people just are always super skinny unless they're in complete power, right? Those ones that have all the power and have all the access to stuff, they're living large in the wasteland, quite literally. Whereas, all the regular people, they're just gaunt from barely getting enough food to survive out there. And so she notices the biker gang that's there, and they're killing a horse that's out inside this lushful forest, and they're taking the horse meat with them, and she goes to stop them. And the main reason is because they don't want any outsiders or anybody from the wasteland knowing that this place exists. So while she's, trying to cut all of the bikes, fluid lines, she gets caught, and then she gets kidnapped, and it's up to her mom and her mom's friend or somebody else from the village. I don't know anything, but it's mostly just the mom to go chase after them. And there is just a long, basically chase sequence that happens. And it's still beautiful. I love the way they transition to things. I love George Miller does such a fantastic job in this movie in terms of directing the action and the set pieces, and it is a visual treat. This movie is a complete visual treat to watch. That is it going to win any awards? Well, maybe for visuals it might, and if stunts
was an Academy Award, it should win it for those stunts, because there's some crazy things that go on in this movie. But it's not going to win anything necessarily like acting or anything like that, because once again, this movie is not about the acting performance, even though I think I could see Chris Hemsworth being nominated for something for this movie, because the way he plays Dementis in this film, it's out of just where I've seen him play roles before. I think that this is probably his best role that I've ever seen him do. It is just that good. That character is really, it's well written and it's well acted. You know, it's funny because I recently talked about this on the Leprechaun podcast that I did, and how just a performance can make a role and how it can make your enjoyment of the movie last. And the moment when he comes into the movie is when I really started getting into everything there, right? Because like I said, the beginning, it's just a lot of the mom chasing after these guys in the motorcycles and picking them off one by one until they get to the town where Dementis is. Like, that whole section seems to last maybe it feels much longer than maybe even, it might be 10 minutes or might be 5 minutes. I don't know. It feels like it's 20 minutes long in the way that it does it. So it was hard to like jump into that. And I was just kind of like, is it going to be like this slow to get us into stuff? Like, where's like the traditional stuff? Because even Mad Max, Fury Road jumped in relatively quick into the whole thing. So she's taken to the town. One of the bikers that survives, he's like, he doesn't want to be a scumbag anymore, right? He doesn't want to be considered scum in Demetrius's eyes. So he wants to speak to him only, and he's going to bring her to him. And so, he gets off the bike for a second, which gives Furiosa a chance to run away, and she sabotages the bike when he tries to chase after her, to where it like wraps around his neck and basically almost kills him. But they end up capturing her, bringing her to Dementis, and there's a great scene where like they bring in the bike rider, and like he's choking on his own blood because his neck is split open, right, from where the chain caught him around the neck, and he's like, oh, he's starting to choke. Flip him upside down so he can tell us exactly what's going on. And so, but Demetrius acts like he's trying to be kind to Furiosa. He's like, look, bathe her, make sure that she's in good health, make sure nothing bad comes to her, and then maybe she'll tell us where this abundance is. Because if they had a place like that, then they would become extremely powerful, right? Trying to rule the wasteland, and if they could... But the problem is that I see in the world of the wasteland is that they would just over-abuse that power and run that into the ground, because they just don't know how to do anything else but war and surviving. And you go to some place where you haven't had all of this before and you don't know how to care for it, you're just going to make it another wasteland of something different. So they go, they take her, they take her into a tent, and that's where her mom shows up, and her mom rescues her. But as she's leaving, like, they shoot her in the back. I think that on the back, because she takes one of the bikes, and I think she puts fuel on the back of the bike. And then as she's leaving, that's when they shoot the fuel, and it starts to like burn her back. Now, I do want to say that there is a lot more use of CGI in this movie than there was in Fury Road. And her being on fire doesn't look as practical. There's still a lot of practical stuff that's done in this movie, but I think that George Miller opted for a little extra CGI for some of the scenes, even though the spectacle is very good. At times, I still was asking, why wasn't that done as practical? And like the flames here, I feel like the flames were done as an effect, and they're filtered in a way so it's to make it feel like it's apocalyptic in how you're looking at it. But it doesn't, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't quite work, and this is one of those few times where I just felt like it didn't. So they go through the desert. Eventually, they realize that they're still chasing after them because they're using dogs to follow the scent, and that's how they're able to find them, even though there's a sandstorm going on, which is wiping away their path. And the mom tells Furiosa, hey, you need to just go. Just keep going. This is how you're going to get there. Follow the sandstorm. It'll cover up your trail. You'll be able to get away and just survive for me. That's the only thing I want you to promise. And she's going to stay back and try to, like, stop them from chasing after her. Of course, she's overwhelmed with the amount of people that are there, and she does get a couple really good shots off and takes down quite a few people, to be honest with you. But ultimately, she's captured, and when Furiosa hears that she's fighting, she decides to turn around and run back and try to see if she can help her mom, not listening to her mom at all. And she gets captured because they want her to tell them where this paradise is. And then Demetrius is keeping her like a daughter in a way, but he's keeping her captured because she's pure, and it's like, oh, that's mine, right? And at one point too, like, the people that are holding her captive for him, they find out that she's got like a peach, and so they eat the peach, and the mom comes to save her. She grabs the seed out of their hands, gives it to her, and that's part of the thing, to hold on to this. And when you get back, make sure that you bury it so that it'll grow. And the ultimate end for that is fantastic too. I love that part is fucking badass. So we then, he's now captured her, and they're roaming the wasteland. They end up running into one of Imogen Joe's. I keep messing up his name. Like, it's not Immortal Joe. It's Imogen Joe is the way that I think it's pronounced. I'm just looking at it over here. But yeah. And it's so he finds one of his guys, and after like going, then he tries to attack him, and it's great because there's a scene where like they're there, and he's like, "We've outsmarted you. We're here. We're gonna take you over." And then he's like, "Go ahead, pick one of my men to fight against your guys." And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna let my dude over here handle it." And he points up, and they point to one guy, and one guy steps forward, and he's like, "No, not you. The person next to him." He's like wearing this red scarf. And so the guy then does his, the spray paint all over the face and everything like that, and then basically leaps to his death, commits suicide to blow up a big portion of Demetrius's army, to which Demetrius like backs off. But you find out how actually smart, like, because it seems like he's just overzealous, especially in the way that Chris Hemsworth plays the character, right? Like, he's a blowhard. He really doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks that he's like a god, but he's not necessarily a god. He's just, a mortal man. And you think that he's just full of himself, thinking that he's so much better than everybody else, but you realize that he's actually relatively smart, because even when you see him, he's almost like a self-help guru type of person. And I loved the history man that's with him, who's got like a bunch of shit that's written all over his arms. Like, again, aesthetically and visually, I just don't see another movie that can like top what's going on with what George Miller's doing, at least lately in this space. I really don't think there's a whole lot of other apocalyptic themed movies that are coming out, but George Miller's got the market, nailed down, especially at his age too. I should say that the budget for this movie is $168 million as of right now, at least from initial tallies. We've got about $60 million in. So it's a big spectacle, and it's not doing as well as it could. And I'll talk about it at the end, because I think that there's something dumb going on, possibly. And I talked about it a little bit at the beginning where I said I don't think that's going to be any of that, and it's not. It's just a good revenge story is really what we've got going on here. To show that he's like really, that he's actually smart, he decides to go to where they produce the gas, right? The gas town. So there's three. There's the Citadel, there's Gas Town, and there's Bullet Town. And so we get to see Gas Town in this movie, and we get to see Bullet Town later on in the movie. But we go to Gas Town, and that's where he basically tricks them into thinking that their convoys, he attacks the gas convoy, right, to go get it. And his fellow guys there, they're like, well, we got gas to last us for years now. This is great. And he's like, no, I want more. He's like, I want power, is what he really wants. And so he decides to dress a bunch of people up and make them like use this like mud that makes like a white paste mix. I think he mixes it with gas, to be honest, instead of water, but he mixes it with gas, and then has a bunch of men cover themselves in it. One of the, like, he's got different factions of biker gangs that are with him. I love his bike chariot too. That thing is so fucking cool. Like, there's nothing as cool as the dude that plays guitar with the flames Like, even though he makes a special appearance in this movie, there's nothing like that that's over the top ridiculous. But that is like very, very close. It even gets like a monster truck later on in the film. And that one's a little less because it doesn't seem practical. It really makes you feel like it's behind something. Whereas this, it is definitely something that is practical. And I know that Luna is still meowing in the background, and I apologize. You have, they basically pretend like they're attacking, and the guy that's the leader of Gastown looks down and is like, that doesn't look that, something's off about that. And Demetrius realizes that they're not buying it. So he tells the rest of the people, make it real. Actually shoot at them, actually kill them. And that's what he ends up doing. He ends up killing a bunch of his own men, to which the guy that's like the leader of those men is like, you're going to pay for this one day. And then that just kind of drops off. There's a lot of stuff like that just drop. And it's weird that they just drop. Like, I wish there was some like inner turmoil that goes there. Eventually there is, but it's not between him and Demetrius, right? And I think his name is Harley. Like, everybody is a band. They're all different types of motorcycles. Like, all this stuff when it comes to like things in the movie are just, it's interesting, especially when you think of the way that the wasteland, everything is about like the cars and what they can be, the vehicles they can build and all that stuff. It's all something different. I had to bring her up here because she's not wanting to listen and be quiet. Huh. No, you're not. Anyway, plus she wants to hear more about Furiosa. So Furiosa, she's still captive at this point, and she's still young. And eventually, when they do the raid on Gastown, and they end up taking it over, and so they rig it to blow, and they go and try to get an audience with Imogen Joe, so that they can make a deal where he will become the Lord of Gastown. And they'll be able to get the supplies that they need, and they'll provide, they now own the gas, so you're going to have to deal with him, and he's going to be part of the top 3. But the trade is that's fine, but we're going to take your, basically a guy in his crew that's like a doctor. They call him like it's a blood something. Like, he's making like sausages out of people's blood, like humans' blood and stuff like that that's out there for them to eat. It's weird, and they're taking the blood directly from Furiosa too. So like and I think it's implied that the blood it's not her normal blood, if you know what I mean. There's a little implication of that because he ends up using him as like the midwife. Imogen Joe does as the midwife for his wives, right? Like the doctor that when the kids are born, he's the one that's now handling the kids. So it's like he understands women's physiology, and that's where I'm kind of like, I think that they were talking about other stuff but calling it blood, right? So so he ends up making the trade, and he gets what he wants, and he's not going to be there and he doesn't want to give her up, and he tries to pretend that that's his daughter, but she ends up like going back on him, like, no, I'm not your daughter. He killed my mom. He's not my dad. I don't want anything to do with him. And then we get to meet his sons, Rictus and Scrotus. I love names in this movie. It's ridiculous because you got things like Chum Bucket and War Pup and War Boy and all these things, Harley, and it's ridiculous. The names in this movie are absolutely ridiculous. You have him, take the girl under his wing, under Joe's wing, and Joe wants to eventually turn her into one of his wives is the idea behind her, because he realized there's something special about her, but because one of his sons is like interested in her and interested in her, like he's playing with her hair and like sniffing her hair, and she decides to make like a wig out of her hair to where when he kidnaps her in the middle of the night so that he can do stuff with her, that he's playing with her hair, she runs and her hair just comes off because she managed to make a wig overnight. And then she escapes. And again, that's never talked about again for the rest of the movie. There's only one little scene where I think it's Rictus is the son, where he looks at her and he's like, you're very familiar. And she's like grown up to be like a teenager, right? And then the brother Scrotus is like, you leave that alone, just leave him alone, because she ends up pretending to be a boy and works on the mechanics stuff. And there's a really cool scene that they do where like you see her as this is Anna Taylor-Joy for the first time, and like they're trying to bring up a tow truck. Well, it's not really it's a tow truck, but it's got a backhoe on it, and they're trying to raise it up so that they can work on it and replate it and everything like that. And it's just the way that everything and the depth of like how high they are. It's breathtaking in the way they do it, even though majority of it's like this is definitely a soundstage CGI, but it still has a really good feel to it. And that's where this happens. So she ends up like joining a faction or pretending that she's part of a faction that is attacking the truck that's gonna be the supply line truck, basically the Fury Road truck, right? Because, and we're talking now into the story of how she became a driver like that. Pardon me. And now we're talking about, or we're getting into the story about how she became like a driver, right? Like she is in Fury Road. And so, and how she's driven the Fury Road, which is basically just the transporting of, needs between towns. So you go to Gas Town and you trade the gas and you give them food and water, or mother's milk, as they call it. And then on the other side, you get, there's Bullet Town. So they do the same thing. They bring gas and they bring food and they get back bullets. So, she basically kind of hijacks on there, and she almost dies. And in this, I love this. This is a great action scene with all the people flying in, with the going underneath the car. She's trying to fix it, and she's reluctantly doing it. And then eventually, like, she loses her hat because she reveals that she's a girl at that point, because the radiator, like one of the gaskets blow on the top of the radiator, and then for her to get it on, she has to put it in the hat and pull it down and then twist it with it, because she can't do it with her own hands for some reason. And that's when like she's revealed to the driver of the car that she's a girl, but he doesn't really care, and she tries to stop him, like, so that like get him to stop to leave, I guess, with the truck or go somewhere. And he kind of just convinces her, hey, you can get what you want, but I can teach you the tricks of this trade, because he's the best driver that there is, or the best, Fury Road person that there is. And he will teach her the tricks of the trade, and then she'll be able to go off and do exactly what she wants to do. So you basically, then it kind of fast forwards a little bit to where now, they're going back and forth, and you get Demetrius kind of comes back into the picture when they go to get gas. And then there's almost a riot in Gastown because they don't have enough food and they can't produce enough gas anymore, right? And they're trying to say, like, no, Emmett Joe, he needs to meet with me, and the rest of everybody, we need to meet tomorrow at noon at the Citadel. I'll be there, or in 3 days, is what he says. At 3 days, we'll meet over there. And you realize that something's not right. And, now that Furiosa is the driver of the truck, and he still doesn't quite recognize who she is, but it ultimately leads into them like realizing that he's holding back supplies, and that if they go to Bullet Town and get a bunch of bullets, this is what Joe and the crew wants to do. They're going to get a bunch of bullets and they're going to raid and try to take back Gastown from Demetrius. But Demetrius, once again, is smart, and instead of staying in Gastown, he and his crew go to raid Bullet Town. So when, Furiosa and her now, like, man, like, they kind of have a relationship, it, like, spawns from it. It's weird because, like, she grows up a little bit more, and he doesn't really change, but he's, older than her, because he kind of met her as a teen-ish. I don't know exactly how old she was, but it's still fine. It is whatever. But even at this point, like, they ended up meeting the rest of the crew again, and nobody knows that it's her, and nobody ever talks about how she escaped. Like, nobody says anything. I know Furiosa wouldn't say anything,
But even at any other point, they would have been like, at least a line or something that I feel needs to be said. Oh, you're gonna lose them like you lost that girl that one time, or even Rictus being in the doghouse for her escaping. But nobody realizes that she's her because now she's grown up and she's lived amongst the people, and she starts rising up the ranks, being this great, driver until eventually she becomes the Imperator by Joe, right? And so when they get to Gastown, they're ambushed by Demetrius's crew, and ultimately, when they try to escape, they do escape eventually, right? She gets moved to like the back car, and because he feels like something's wrong, and like she needs to be watching the rear. And then when everything happens, she's outside and she's leaving, but then like just like with her mom, she decides to go back and help the dude. And ultimately, like this is a good spectacle because it's like him driving around in the truck and all these things are flying through it, and then Furiosa comes in with her sniper rifle and it's just like picking people off. One of my favorite things that happens to Demetrius, he's like, he's against this like tower, and he's slowly but surely all the people around him are getting picked off, and I laugh so hard because like, do you see where it's coming from? And one guy like leans his head out to look, and bam, he's like shot and he falls over. It's fucking great. And then like Demetrius gets a rocket launcher, and I'm like, what are you gonna do? And he's like, okay, I'm gonna get ready to fire. And then right before he's gonna fire, he puts his other dude, the last dude that's with him up there, in front of him, so that guy takes the shot and that he can fire the rocket at her. Like, again, he's not stupid. Maybe he's arrogant and he thinks he's bigger than he is, but he's not an idiot. And that's why I really love the way the guy is played. Also, there's on the first attack scene, I forgot to mention this, like one of the things that they added to this like tanker truck is something they call like the Bobo or something like that. And it's basically like a spiked cylindrical thing, and it's got these like flails on it, and then it starts spinning, and there's this little person that controls it. And like they keep telling him not to do it, and then when he goes inside, he's like sitting on all the cabbages inside. And like, do I really want somebody like that sitting on my cabbages? Probably not. But eventually, it's up to her to start it, and it's all the way at the back in the little compartment. And then when it does, like it just wreaks havoc. But later on, now they've decided to improve the technology, so the button to turn it on is inside the main cabin where it should have been the first time. So anyway, eventually, yeah, they do manage to stop Demetrius inside Bullet Town. Like, the driver dude knocks into the silo that he's on, causing and basically destroying Bullet Town in the production, right? So that bullets probably are not really going to be made anymore in Bullet Town anytime soon. And they manage to escape together, but Demetrius gets in his, big giant monster truck, bashes open the door because the gate came down and they were trying to trap them in there so they wouldn't be able to go back and warn anybody. But they end up being on the move and driving on their way out there. But because Demetrius is able to take down the door, the rest of the crew all eventually catch up to them. And you get kind of one of the sadder parts in the movie where this is how she loses her arm. She's trying to shoot at Demetrius in the truck, and then he just takes his fucking truck and slams right into her arm with the giant big wheels of the monster truck, which just completely mess up her arm. And then they decide to hang her up, not by her good arm, but by her bad arm. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, so she's just gonna tear her arm off, and that's how she's gonna survive, right? And this was kind of dumb. Like, so while they hang her up, they take her lover or her mentor, or whatever you want to call him, and they basically drive around in circles with him and drag him along the ground, right, until he's dead. And until Demetrius feels like they've had enough, and when he finally stops everything from going on, that's when they find out that Furiosa has escaped by removing her arm. But I'm like, how do you not? One, how does she stay quiet? Because that's got to hurt like a bitch. And two, how does nobody notice her leaving? And then she even sets a trap. She puts the chain around the tire, so when he tries to leave, it pops one of the, like, nobody's noticing this. There's so many times where people just don't notice shit in this movie, and it's just weird. I don't know why they do it. So we then go back to Furiosa going over to the main people of the Citadel, and when they go to the people of the Citadel, she goes to Joe. Well, she collapses in the desert. Actually, and I don't know if it's at this point. I think it might be at this point, or maybe it's a little later on in the film. I think we get a cameo from Mad Max. Like, you see his car is up there, and he's like looking at the sunset. Like, he gets out for a second. So Mad Max does make an appearance, but it's not any Mad Max that we've seen before, and we don't really get anything else with him. And so she's back there. Yeah, I believe that's later on in the film. It's towards the end of the film when she's chasing down Demetrius once again. But she goes. After she's like collapses in the desert, somebody finds her. She ends up, Deus Ex Machina, being in the goddamn citadel, but just in the burrows with maggots all over her arm, and there's all these like body parts strewn all over the place. It's fucking disgusting. It's well done, but it's goddamn disgusting. So she's like in there with all the body parts, and then she realizes where she's at, and she ends up telling some of the guards that who she is. And they take her up to go see Joe and the rest of them. And they initially don't want to believe her when she says that Demetrius is not in Gastown, because they're deciding to go attack Gastown because it looks like it's on fire. But when you think about it, why would he burn the gas down? Like that definitely would be a trap. And that's what he's trying to set. So when Furiosa comes in, she's like, no, he was in Bullet Town and he's coming here. They're expecting you to go to Gastown with all your forces. And when you do, they're going to take over Citadel. So they decide to play a trick on him as well, where they take a bunch of cars and drag it out into the desert, and they put something on the back so it looks like it's kicking up a ton of dust, and that's like a giant army, which Demetrius, it actually tricks him, and he believes that his trick has worked on them and calls them simpletons, but he's being outsmarted here because Furiosa survived, right? So the last part of the movie is her getting her arm, which is cool. It's fun. I think the way a look of it is great. I definitely like. It's weird that if the way that this seems like it blends into the next one, but I think it happens over time. Like, she becomes an imperator for him, and then she eventually meets the wives and what they're going through, and then hatches the plan for their escape, which leads to Fury Road, right? And so she has time to get the arm working, but it's just like, how do you have an arm that's already done and you have the time? But they do explain that this is a long war that starts. It's like the 40 Days War, I think is what they called it. And so eventually, she crafts her arm, she puts her arm on, it's all great and everything that's there. And then she, has to get out there, and they have a car that they bring, like they have the last vehicle there, and they have to put like a wooden stick to make it for one of the time. And in my mind, like, that's kind of ingenious if that actually works. I mean, it's probably not street legal. I mean, you're not going to go and drag race with that shit, but that's pretty neat. I like the way they did that. And so you basically get her, when she arrives at the base camp, and one of the older sons, Scrotus, he wants to take all of her fuel, take one of her good tires because one of his tires blew out on his car, and then he can go after Demetrius. But of course, Furiosa takes over the car, because even when like Joe is getting ready to do the attack on Demetrius, she pulls him by the arm, to which like startles him, like, she's like, when you find Demetrius, he's mine. And then he's just like, looks up and down at her, is like, you got it. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. So ultimately, there is like a little bit of cat and mouse chase. I like the way that this worked too, where like they split off and she chased like one group, and it ended up being like his like main helper person that ended up being disguised as him. And then she saw the two bikes split, and then one bike went into an area he shouldn't have gone in. And so when they catch up to him, all these people beat the crap out of that guy. He's like, oh, there's no way that's Demetrius, so he must be going off that way. And eventually, like, he thinks he escapes into the desert, into the a sandstorm, and he's protecting himself, but she catches up with him, and she gets rid of all his bullets, gets rid of his knife, does everything, gets rid of all of his gas, and he's like, oh, you finally caught up to me. And there's finally the one-on-one with it, and she ends up like beating the crap out of him, and she's about to shoot him, but what I think how they said it is that she ended up, like, after having the conversation with him, she shot him in a way that she took away his voice. So she took away his like vocal cords, probably something in the neck or whatever, but didn't kill him. And they said there's all these tales, and I love how they're showing all the different ways that people have said how he's died, being strung up on trees, being mutilated, all this stuff. But what Furiosa said she did is that in the Citadel, there is a tree that's growing there, and it's being fertilized by human flesh that's being kept alive by maggots. And so the canonical ending, or what Furiosa tells everybody, is that she took the seed, planted in the ground using Demetrius, who is alive still, as the fertilizer for the tree. And that image is so fucking cool. And then it leads right into Mad Max Fury Road. So there's no big message. It is just a straight up revenge movie. It is a spectacle to watch. It's beautiful. I absolutely love the way that it looks. And it's just fun. I just had so much fun. If it wasn't for the annoying kid and their parents, I wouldn't have had as much fun in the film. Or I probably would have had more fun. And I think Patrick probably also would have enjoyed it more than they said. But I think it's not as good as Fury Road. I think Fury Road is much better. I think a lot of it for me has to also do with sometimes lack of practical that happened in the movie. But overall, I think it's worth a watch. So you guys should go see it. So thank you guys again so much for watching. Thank you for sitting through the spoilers with me and as I went through the rest of the movie. So there should be more reviews coming out soon. I'm working on a couple different things. I don't know when we're going to see The Strangers, but I'm trying to go see The Strangers with everybody. And I'm still trying to find a time to sit down and watch Imaginary so that I can get that a video review up for that movie as well and see how ridiculous that movie is. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really helps. There's a lot of people that have seen the videos, but they're not subscribers to the channel, and it'd really help out the channel if you would do that. And if you want to ring the bell, you can ring the bell. I hate saying that bullshit, but a lot of people, again, like you say, a lot of people have said that there's a lot of people that view it, but they don't, they don't subscribe. And I would just appreciate the subscription. So thank you once again very much. Make sure that you follow Patrick. That's Solus_64 on most socials, or Solus64 or Big Solus64. Everything is available. It'll be down in links below. For myself, there's a new episode of Leprechaun 4 of the podcast, Leprechaun in Space. I can't say it any different way. It's ridiculous. It's fun. Check out the latest podcast that's there. I had a question for people that do say you listen to the podcast, you watch things. Would you want the audio podcast to be uploaded to YouTube? The only issue that I have with it is because I do use audio from the movies mixed in with the podcast, that it may have some, I may get like strikes, or it wouldn't be muted because it's not Twitch, they mute pieces of audio, but I'm afraid that it would just, they would be up there for people to listen to. But if I ever got monetized in this channel, I would never be able to monetize the podcasts. So up to you guys. If you want them, I can definitely upload them here so that people have them on another platform. But it would be audio only. It wouldn't be video, because that shit would take me way too long to do. As you can already see, the length of those podcasts are really fucking long. But yeah, check it out. The rest, other Twitter. Actually, all the links are down below. Go down there. Look. Join me on Twitch. I've also been thinking about doing maybe one of my streams a week, doing a YouTube stream instead. If you guys are interested in that, please let me know. And I could actually set that one up so that once a week I'll stream on YouTube, at least for the time being. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys very much, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.